Welcome to episode 86 of EDH Commander Challenge. I'm your host BT, and as promised today I've got some sweet goodies for you and some not so great news, but I'll get to that in a minute. It's not as bad as you think, but just don't want there to be any surprises. First things first, it's time to announce the latest EDHCC giveaway card. This card is a sweet one, so I hope you enjoy it. To let you know what it is, without any further ado, drum roll. It's a foil from the vault Vesuva. For those of you who never played this awesome card, it comes into play tapped and allows you to copy any land in play. So if you see your opponent has a land that could be of use to you, like whether it be their Gaia's Cradle, or Cabal Coffers, or something of that nature. Maybe Talarian Academy if they ever unban it. Probably won't, but just saying. Or if you just want to get a copy of something else you already have out that's useful, like a Thespian Stage, or a Strip Mine, or another dual land, you can do that with this card. So next week, I will be letting everybody know how you'll be able to enter the contest, the giveaway, to give this poor, lonely, but sweet card a good home. Whether it be in one of your decks, or just to add a little extra spice to your trade binder. Also, this week's episode is a multiplayer match. It pretty much would have represented our 900 subscriber special. We kind of climbed so fast into 1,000, didn't have enough time to film it. Hope you enjoy it. There'll be new commanders, there'll be older commanders you've seen before. It's going to be me, it's going to be Phil that's there, also the mad scientist Francis, and Gemi. Now for the not so great news. A deal's a deal, and I did promise that once we got to 1,000 subscribers, I would show you guys my ugly mug. So if this breaks anyone's TV screens, tablets, cell phones, or any other things you're watching it on, I do apologize, but you had fair warning. Now, this picture you're going to see here will be a picture of myself holding a championship belt, which I'll get to later in the year when I do our first ever EDHCC tournament. So stay tuned for that. And next to me is pretty much one of the most beautiful women in all the world. She is the absolutely talented cosplayer, because this took place during Comic-Con, Yaya Han. For those of you who don't know who Yaya Han is, once again, famous cosplayer. She's done all kinds of cosplays, including things I'm sure you're well aware of, including Street Fighter's Chun-Li, which is probably her best one, I think. So definitely go check her out. She has a cool Facebook page. Yaya, it was a pleasure to meet you. And now for a little bit of extra news, and I do apologize for this, but towards the end of this episode, you're going to notice the camera kind of tilts a little bit because somebody kind of smacked the camera trying to get into the table, because this was filmed at Gamers Cafe. So when it gets down to 2 people, the camera's going to tilt and it barely shows you one of the players' cards that they're playing, but it's still enough that you can see all the action that's going on. It's just that the camera is off. So I do apologize for that once again. I will make sure to mention it during the commentary of the video so you know when it happens. But once again, I'm sure it was an accident on that person's part. I didn't know about it until after, when I got home, when the filming was already done wrapping up. But again, as a bonus, I will be doing an extra 4-player match very soon to make up for this. But it's still a great match, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started and show those opening hands. First, we have the Philip playing his Simic style Ezuri Claw of Progress deck. His opening hand consists of Elvish Mystic, Memory Lapse, Dark Steel Ingot, Mosswort Bridge, 2 forests, and an island. I have joined the Zombie Apocalypse, and I'm leading the charge with my Josu Vess Lich Knight Mono Black deck. My opening hand consists of Crypt Breaker, Blood Gift Demon, Crypt Ghast, a Swamp, Thran Dynamo, Wayfarer's Bauble, and Unholy Grotto. Mr. Gemi is back with his Golgari Partners Commanders, featuring Gorm the Great and Virtus the Veiled. His opening hand consists of Explosive Vegetation, Rampant Growth, Llanowar Elves, a Forest, Lightning Greaves, Solemn Simulacrum, and Verdant Catacombs. By the way, can somebody in the comments tell me where Solemn Simulacrum gained the name Sad Robot? I never got that. And finally, the mad scientist Francis is back with his Boros Dragon Knights, featuring Sylvia Brightspear and Khorvath Bright Flame. His opening hand consists of Aurelia the War Leader, the most loveless dragon in Magic, Lathless Dragon Queen, Novice Knight, Boros Signet, Reliquary Tower, Shinka the Blood-Soaked Keep, and Wind-Scarred Crag. Gemi won the dice roll and will be starting us off. Let's go! Gemi plays Overgrown Tomb, untapped, taking 2 damage, and casts Llanowar Elves, and passes. Francis plays a Wind-Scarred Crag, gaining a life, and passes. Phil plays a Forest, and casts Elvish Mystic, and passes. I play a super etchy Swamp, and cast Wayfarer's Bauble, and pass. Gemi plays a Forest and casts Dark Ritual. He uses the 3 mana from it to cast his general, Virtus the Veiled. Then he casts Lightning Greaves. This pretty much scares the rest of us at the table. He equips the Greaves to Virtus, giving it haste. Then he moves into combat and attacks Francis with it, dropping Francis down to 20, just like that. Then he passes. An angry mad scientist plays Battlefield Forge and casts Boros Signet, and passes. Phil plays an island and casts Dark Steel Ingot. He then uses that mana right away to cast Hardened Scales, and passes. I play an Unholy Grotto and cast Crypt Breaker to avoid Gemi's wrath, and pass. Gemi starts his turn by casting Soul Ring, followed by Explosive Vegetation, which allows him to add some basic lands from his deck into play. He then moves into combat and attacks Phil with Virtus, dropping his life total down to 20 as well. This may end up being a really fast game. In any event, Mr. Gemi passes. Francis plays Shinka, the Blood-Soaked Keep, and casts Novice Knight, followed by the first of his 2 generals, Sylvia Brightspear. Then he passes. Phil plays Mossward Bridge, hiding away a card. Then he casts his general, Ezuri, Claw of Progress, before passing. And now for my game-breaking move. I play a swamp and pass. For Gemi's turn, he plays his other general, Gorm the Great. Followed by Worn Power Stone. He then moves into combat after equipping his Gorm with Greaves and attacks me with both of his generals. Thanks to his Gorm's effect, my Crypt Breaker is forced to block it, allowing his Virtus the Veiled to drop my life total down to 20 along with everyone else's. Now that Gemi has his massive life lead, he passes the turn. Francis plays Reliquary Tower and casts Gilded Lotus and passes. Phil plays a Forest and passes. During his end step, I sacrifice my Wayfarer's Bauble to grab a swamp from my deck into play, tapped. For my turn, I bargain with the rest of the table to allow a board wipe to slow Gemi down a bit. Everyone agrees, and I cast Living Death. In response, Phil casts Mystic Confluence, choosing to draw a card and saving his 2 creatures by bouncing them to his hand before it resolves. As no one at this point but me has any creatures in their graveyards, pretty much everyone transfers their creatures on the field to the graveyard, and my Crypt Breaker returns before I pass. For Gemi's turn, he casts Necropotence, followed by Solemn Simulacrum. This allows him to add another basic land from his deck into play tapped. Then he moves his Lightning Greaves onto the Solemn and moves into combat and attacks Phil with it for 2 before passing. The Mad Scientist Francis plays a Plains and casts the Loveless Dragon, Lapless Queen Dragon, which in response, Gemi pays 7 life to Necropotence to set aside 7 cards to add to his hand once Francis passes. Phil plays an island and casts his Ezuri and then his Elvish Mystic again, which gives Phil his first experience counter. He then moves into combat, and thanks to Ezuri and Hardened Scales, gets to put 2 +1/+1 counters on his Mystic before passing the turn. I play a Swamp and cast Cryptghast, doubling my black mana, and pass. Gemi plays a Swamp and casts Sensei's Divining Top, and pays 1 mana immediately to check his top 3 cards. Then he casts Vampire Nighthawk. Followed by Kidus Spike. And finally, Rampant Growth, allowing him to grab a basic land from his deck and to play tapped before he passes. For Francis's turn, he casts Udvara Hellkite, which in turn triggers his Latless, giving him a 5/5 dragon token. And now, when the mad scientist attacks with a dragon, he'll be able to make another 6/6 dragon, which makes the rest of the table pretty much shiver in fear. Then he passes. Phil plays a forest and moves to combat again to power up his mystic with another 2 +1/+1 counters. However, he chooses to pass without attacking. During his end step, I discard a card, the Crypt Breaker, to add a 2/2 zombie token to my side of the field. For my turn, I cast Thran Dynamo, and I choose to extort the spell, gaining 3 life while everyone else loses 1. Then, I cast Call to the Grave, which forces each player to sacrifice a non-zombie creature during each of their upkeeps. I choose to extort that spell as well. Then, I pass. During my end step, Gemi uses Necropotence again, paying 2 life to add 2 more cards to his hand. Gemi sacrifices his Solemn to the Call during his upkeep, and draws an extra card. He then plays a Swamp, and casts Grim Monolith. He then casts the beautiful Seedborn Muse. However, Phil counterspells it with Dream Fracture. This allows Gemi and Phil to draw an extra card. Gemi then follows this up with Commander Sphere, and then casts Yeheni Undying Partisan. But again, Phil counterspells this time with a Memory Lapse, which places Yeheni on the top of Gemi's deck. He then equips his Lone Nighthawk with Lightning Greaves and passes. Francis sacrifices his token to call during his upkeep, while Gemi pays 1 to check his top 3 again with Sensei's Divining Top. Then Francis smiles right before casting Avacyn Angel of Hope, which makes his field even more broken and indestructible. No pun intended. He then moves into combat and laughs maniacally, attacking Gemi with Latless and Udvara. This allows him to gain 2 6/6 dragons in the process. Gemi blocks Latless, gaining 2 life, before he loses 6 to the Hellkite. Then Francis passes. Phil sacks his Mystic during his upkeep to call. Then he casts the powerful Pure Imaginative Rascal. He uses its effect to add Toothy, Imaginary Friend, from his deck to his hand, which he then casts as well. This in turn gives 2 more experience counters to the Philip. He then moves into combat, and thanks to his Hardened Scales and now Peer, gains 6 total +1/+1 counters to put on Toothy before he passes. With tears in my eyes, I sadly say goodbye to my Crypt Gas, as it's not a zombie, it's a spirit, and sacrifice it to my call during my upkeep. Then I cast Liliana of the Dark Realms. Followed by Cemetery Reaper. I then uptick my Liliana to add a swamp from my deck to my hand and pass while I search for it to shortcut. During my end step, Gemi pays another 5 life to Necropotence to add 5 more cards to his hand. Gemi plays a forest and casts the almighty Genesis Wave for 11. That is OP. And the 11 cards that Gemi reveals are Reflecting Pool, Stratascythe, Bear Umbra, Raving Dead, Crystal Ball, Inkmoth Nexus, Thunderfoot Baloth, Izareth the Awakener, Elvish Mystic, Acidic Slime, and Sword of the Parents. That was perfect. Not even one miss. He then resolves his triggers using Acidic Slime to destroy Hardened Scales, and removes a forest from his deck to the Scythe. He also attempts to bargain with Francis not to attack him by equipping his Bear Umbra to a dragon token of the Mad Scientist. He equips his Mystic with Lightning Greaves and passes the turn. The Mad Scientist outright refuses the charity and sacrifices the Bear Umbra token. Hashtag ouch! Then says GG to the rest of the table and casts Aurelia the War Leader. He then moves into combat and attacks Gemi with all of his creatures, gaining 4 new 6/6 dragon tokens in the process. Unfortunately for Gemi, even blocking Latlas with his Inkmoth Nexus, the Mad Scientist deals well over lethal damage, eliminating Gemi. Then he moves into his second combat phase. He attacks me with Avacyn and his slightly weakened Latlas for 13 damage, and has the rest of his creatures attack Phil, dealing him lethal damage.
Foot die!
His reasoning behind doing so was he worried about a potential Cyclonic Rift in his next turn. Just like that, the Mad Scientist just pulled a 1-turn 2-kill and passes. During his end step, as I'm out of options and I'm desperate to find an answer, I use Crypt Breaker's ability and tap 3 zombies to draw a card and lose a life. For my turn, I play Cabal Coffers and uptick Liliana to search out another swamp. This is where I have to apologize to you guys because this is when someone bumped into the camera and I didn't notice, but thankfully you can still just barely see everything in play. So once again, my apologies everyone. Anyways, I again used the Crypt Breaker's effect, tapping 3 zombies to draw another card and lose another life. Then I pay a total of 10 mana to cast Black Sun Zenith for 8, which is just barely enough to wipe the board. Then I pass the turn and shuffle the Zenith back into my deck. During Francis's turn, I realized that Call to the Grave should have been put in the graveyard as there were no creatures in play at the end of turn, and so I get rid of it. Then he casts Varric's Bladewing and pays the kicker, gaining a 4/4 Karok's Bladewing token, and passes. I play a swamp and use Liliana's -3 ability to give -5/-5 to Varric's, killing it. Then I pay all my mana to cast Torment of Hailfire on Francis, where X is 10. By giving up his remaining hand and all of his active non-land permanents, Francis only takes 15 damage and manages to survive the effect. With nothing else to do, I have no choice but to pass. Francis plays a Handweir Battlements and casts his other general, Khorvath Brightflame. He then moves into combat as it has haste, and attacks and kills my Liliana. Then he passes. For my turn, I play a swamp and finally cast my general, Josu Vess Lich Knight. I also paid the kicker, which allows me to make 8 2/2 zombie tokens with Menace. Then I cast Shepherd of Rot. Francis advises me that since I can't attack this turn or tap my Shepherd of Rot, he'll be able to finish me off in his next turn. I fully agree with him, but I advise him I still have one more card left in my hand to play. And with that, I cycle Gempalm Polluter, causing Francis to lose 1 life for each zombie in play, ending the game and giving me the extremely narrow victory. For this week's MVP, let's start with Gemi. Definitely has to be Virtus the Veiled himself. I mean, early on in the game, this card caused over 60 points of life loss. The only drawback was it painted a big target on Gemi's back and led to him being the first person eliminated later on. In the case of Philip, probably Toothy, because if he made it to his turn and was able to sacrifice it, he would have drawn a lot of cards that could have opened up a bunch of new possibilities for him. For the Mad Scientist, it's gotta be Udvar Hellkite, a prime example of a good offense and defense, being able to attack with all of his dragons while still getting new dragons that are able to block. You might as well just call them John Cena at that point, because he was mostly untouchable. And the Avacyn made things even more broken. For myself, no doubt, Black Sun Zenith. Not really much to say here other than the fact that without that card, I wouldn't have been able to do anything against the Mad Scientist's near unbeatable board. Do you agree with our picks? Let us know in the comments down below. Once again, guys, I'm so sorry for the camera trouble. I'll make sure to film a bonus 4-player match for you guys in the near future as an apology. But we have another one coming up anyways, because it's part of our 1K sub special. And don't forget, next week I'll have details on how you can enter the giveaway to have your chance to win a foil, beautiful, from the vault Vazuba. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you're a fan of EDH gameplay and you like whether it be 1v1 or multiplayer and you want to be part of the ever-growing Command Your Challenge family, just make sure you smash the subscribe button and notification bell down below. We do weekly videos. Don't forget as well to like, comment, share our videos, but most importantly, enjoy them. On behalf of all of our members here, I'm your host, BT. Feel free to check out all of the videos in the channel. Join our game. It's now your turn. Cheers!